Think about the wealthiest person you actually know personally. Not a celebrity. Not someone you follow online. Someone in your real life. A neighbor, a former colleague, a cousin, who is clearly doing significantly better with money than most people around them. Now answer this honestly. Do you know exactly how they got there? Most people don't. And the story they fill in the gap with is usually some version of luck. A family connection. A business that happened to blow up. A real estate deal that hit at the right moment. Something that couldn't be replicated. Something you didn't have access to. Here's what's almost certainly actually true. They buy different things than you do. Not more expensive things. Not flashier things. Specifically different things. Things that most people look at and immediately dismiss as either boring, unnecessary, or mildly embarrassing to admit you own. The reason wealthy people can seem almost impossible to decode from the outside is that the actual mechanics of how they build and protect money are genuinely unimpressive to look at. There's no visual language for, "I've never had a car payment in my adult life," or, "I've been maxing an HSA since I was 29. There's no Instagram post for a fiduciary financial advisor or a prepaid mortgage principal payment. And so the purchases that are actually doing the most work, the ones that separate financial trajectories over 20 years, are completely invisible in the spaces where people perform wealth. They don't show up in the places you're looking. By the end of this video, you'll have a complete list of 12 of them, each one with the actual numbers behind it. Stay until number 12. It's the one that matters most and the one almost nobody gets right. Let's get into it. Number 1. A used car paid in cash. Let me start with the one that gets the most pushback, because the pushback itself is the entire point. The average new car payment in the United States right now is $735 a month. $735. Every month. For a vehicle that lost somewhere between 15% and 25% of its value the moment it left the dealer's lot. That's $8,820 a year. Leaving someone's account. For something that is worth less every single day they own it. Thomas Stanley spent decades researching the actual financial behavior of wealthy Americans for his book, The Millionaire Next Door. One of his most consistent findings was that wealthy people disproportionately drive used vehicles. Not because they're cheap, because they understand a distinction that sounds obvious once you hear it, but apparently isn't. A car is not an investment. It is transportation, and you do not finance transportation at 7% interest for 6 years if you have the option not to. A 2023 Ramsey Solutions survey found that 73% of millionaires in the U.S. have never in their adult lives taken out a car loan. Not once. Here's the number that should make this concrete. That's $735 a month, invested instead of paid to a lender, at a 7% annual return over 10 years, doesn't become $88,200. It becomes approximately $122,000. Because the money they're not sending to a lender compounds while it sits in an account. The person driving the modest paid-off car isn't being frugal. They're redirecting a payment that most people treat as a permanent cost of adult life into something that grows without them doing anything else. Number 2. Term life insurance. At 28, not 45. I know how this sounds. Keep going. A healthy 28-year-old can buy a 30-year term life insurance policy, $1 million in coverage, for somewhere between $30 and $50 a month. That same coverage purchased at 45? $150 to $300 a month minimum, and that's assuming there's been no health event in the intervening years. A single diagnosis can make you uninsurable entirely. The window closes, and you don't get to reopen it. Most people wait until the need feels urgent, a mortgage, kids, a major financial dependency, before they think about this. By the time it's urgent, the cost has tripled, and the people who've had the bad health event simply no longer have the option. Wealthy people don't buy insurance because they're scared. They buy it early because they understand that the product is cheapest when you need it least. Buying when you don't feel like you need it is the entire point. It is not complicated. Almost nobody does it on their own. Number 3. ACPA, not tax software. The average American spends $70 to $150 on tax software, completes their return in a few hours, and feels responsible about it. A professional CPA costs $500 to $2,000 annually. Most people look at that number and categorize it as an expense. Wealthy people categorize it as a return. Here's the difference. Tax software is designed to help you accurately report what happened. ACPA is designed to help you structure what's going to happen so that less of it goes to taxes. These are completely different jobs. Research from the National Bureau of Economic Research shows that professional tax preparation generates an average return of 3 to 4 times its cost in reduced tax liability. For someone earning $90,000, the difference between a self-filed return and a professionally optimized one can easily reach $3,000 to $5,000 annually. For a small business owner, the number is higher and often significantly so. Run that through a decade. An extra $4,000 a year, invested at 7%, isn't $40,000. It's $55,000. Poor people pay $70 for software and feel like they saved money. Wealthy people pay $1,500 for a CPA and get $4,000 back. That is not a close comparison. Number 4. Index funds, the product nobody wants to talk about. There is no investment product that has generated more consistent long-term wealth for ordinary people than a low-cost index fund. There is also almost nothing less exciting to bring up at a dinner party. No story. No stock pick that tripled. No position to explain or defend. Just a fund that tracks the market, charges minimal fees, and has returned somewhere between 7% and 10% annually before inflation for the last 50 years. Here is the part that should be impossible to dismiss. Warren Buffett, the most celebrated investor in modern history, a man who has spent his career analyzing individual businesses and picking stocks, has stated publicly, multiple times, that when he dies, his instructions for his wife's inheritance include putting 90% of the money into a low-cost S&P 500 index fund. The most sophisticated investor alive recommends the most boring product available. Most people spend their investing attention on individual stocks, crypto, sector trends, and tips from people who seem confident, all of which require being right consistently in a game where the overwhelming majority of professional fund managers, who do this full-time with teams of analysts, consistently fail to beat the index over a decade. The math is straightforward. $500 a month starting at 25, held until 65, at 7% annualized after inflation. Approximately $1.3 million. The fund doesn't care what the news said this week. It doesn't ask for any decisions after the first one. People who find that deeply satisfying tend to end up wealthier than people who find it deeply boring. Number 5. A real estate attorney. Before closing, the average American homebuyer spends $400,000 on a property. They hire an inspector, a realtor, a mortgage broker, and a moving company. A significant number of them do not hire a real estate attorney. A real estate attorney charges $500 to $1,500 to review the transaction. What they do with that time is read the contract the way someone who has reviewed thousands of contracts reads a contract, which is completely different from the way a first-time buyer reads a contract the night before, closing when they're mostly just looking for where to sign. What gets missed without one? Title issues that can cloud ownership and surface as expensive legal problems years later. Easements that restrict what you're legally permitted to do with land you believe you own. Contract clauses written to favor the seller that cost the buyer thousands. HOA provisions with financial obligations, buried in language the buyer assumed was standard boilerplate. On a $400,000 purchase, a missed contract detail can cost anywhere from a few thousand to tens of thousands of dollars to resolve. The attorney who catches it charged $800, Wealthy people don't assume good faith when $400,000 is on the table. They pay someone whose entire job is knowing exactly where the problems hide. Number 6. An HSA used as a third retirement account. This is the most consistently misused financial tool available to working Americans. And the gap between how most people use it and how wealthy people use it is eventually worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. A health savings account is the only triple tax-advantaged account in the U.S. tax code. Contributions go in pre-tax. They reduce your taxable income. Growth inside the account is completely tax-free. Withdrawals for qualified medical expenses are tax-free. After 65, you can withdraw for any purpose and pay only ordinary income tax, exactly like a traditional IRA. In 2025, individuals can contribute up to $4,300 per year, and families up to $8,550. Most people use their HSA like a medical checking account. A prescription costs $40. They pull it from the HSA. A copay shows up. They pull from the HSA. The account cycles continuously and never grows. Wealthy people treat the HSA as a vehicle they never plan to touch. They pay routine medical expenses from regular income, let the HSA contributions compound invested in index funds, and let the account build for decades. Someone who maxes their HSA from 28 to 65, invests the balance, and doesn't touch it, arrives at 65 with a tax-free account worth approximately $1 million running in parallel to every other account they've been building. The same contributions. Completely different outcome. The only variable is what they decided to do with the account. Number 7. A fiduciary financial advisor. Not just any advisor. This distinction will matter more to your long-term financial outcome than almost anything else in this video. There are 2 types of financial advisors operating in the United States right now. The first type is legally required to act in your best interest at all times. The second is only required to recommend products that are suitable for you. A legal standard that permits recommending higher commission products when better alternatives exist, as long as the recommendation isn't completely inappropriate. The second type is significantly more common. The word advisor applies to both. A fiduciary, typically a fee-only planner who charges a flat or hourly rate instead of commissions, has a legal obligation to prioritize your outcome over their compensation. That sounds like the obvious preference. It is apparently not obvious to most people because the majority of Americans with investment accounts are currently working with non-fiduciary advisors without knowing it. Dalbar tracked investor returns against market returns over 30 years and found that the average investor significantly and consistently underperforms the market. Not because markets performed poorly, because of the decisions made around their portfolios, decisions frequently influenced by advisors whose income was connected to the products they recommended. Wealthy people pay explicitly for advice. The misaligned incentive disappears when your advisor's compensation doesn't depend on what they sell you. That is an extremely simple thing to fix. Almost nobody fixes it. Number 8. Therapy or executive coaching. I understand this one sounds like the one that doesn't belong on a financial list. Stay with it. A 2022 study from the London School of Economics found that untreated mental health conditions cost the global economy approximately $1 trillion annually in lost productivity. That's the macro picture. At the individual level, the financial cost of unaddressed psychological patterns, compulsive spending as emotional regulation, risk avoidance driven by anxiety, scarcity thinking that limits income, decision-making impaired by chronic stress, is real and significant, and almost never shows up in a financial plan. Wealthy people invest in the quality of their decisions the same way they invest in other assets. A person who has worked through a scarcity mindset and makes financial decisions from security rather than fear makes different choices about risk, about negotiation, about their own career ceiling, than someone who hasn't. The exact return on a good therapist is hard to calculate. The direction of the effect is not. Here's the detail that makes this one particularly interesting. The hesitation most people feel about paying for this specific thing is often exactly the pattern that makes it valuable. The people who most need it tend to be the most reluctant to pay for it. Number 9. Extra mortgage principal. Every month, on a $350,000 mortgage at 6.5% interest over 30 years, you will pay approximately $446,000 in interest alone. Let that sit. You borrow $350,000. You pay back $796,000. Nearly half of that, $446,000, goes to the lender and builds nothing for you. Adding $200 a month to the principal payment from the beginning reduces the loan term by roughly 8 years and eliminates approximately $97,000 in interest. The mathematical return on that $200 is equivalent to a guaranteed 6.5% annual return. Better than most bonds. Zero risk. Wealthy people read their amortization schedules. They understand what most people don't. In the first decade of a 30-year mortgage, nearly every payment goes to interest. The principal barely moves. That knowledge changes how they think about every extra dollar sent to the lender. Most people make the minimum payment for 30 years and feel financially responsible for doing it. The difference between that and $200 extra a month isn't discipline. It's knowing how the math actually works. Number 10. Long-term disability insurance. The Social Security Administration estimates that 1 in 4 U.S. workers will experience a disability before retirement age. 1 in 4, and the most common cause isn't a dramatic accident. It's chronic conditions, back injury, cancer, cardiovascular disease, mental illness, that develop gradually and eliminate sustained full-time work. The average long-term disability claim lasts 31 months. 6 months of disability at a median U.S. income of $60,000 is $30,000 in lost earnings, before rent, debt, or any bill that doesn't stop when your paycheck does. Long-term disability insurance replaces 60% to 70% of your income if you can't work. It costs roughly 1% to 3% of your annual income in premiums. Most people don't own it, not because they considered the odds and declined, because they assumed it wouldn't happen to them, a decision made with no actual consideration of the probability at all. You insure your car, your house, your phone. You are statistically more likely to be disabled before retirement than to have your house burned down. Number 11. A business entity. Before you think you need one. Most people wait until they have a successful business to form an LLC or S-Corp. Wealthy people with self-employed income form them much earlier, often before they're sure they need one. Here's why. An S-Corp election lets a business owner split income between a salary and a distribution. The salary is subject to self-employment tax at 15.3%. The distribution is not. A freelancer earning $80,000 as a sole proprietor pays roughly $11,000 in self-employment tax. The same person with an S-Corp, paying themselves a reasonable salary of $50,000 and taking the rest as a distribution, might reduce that to $7,000. That's $4,000 a year. Over 10 years, invested at 7%, that's approximately $55,000 from a structure that cost $500 to $1,500 to set up and a few $100s a year to maintain. The entity doesn't require a full business. It requires self-employed income and the willingness to do the paperwork. Most people who qualify never do it. Number 12. Other people's time. This is the last one and the most important one. It's also the one that gets the most resistance. Wealthy people buy time, not as a luxury. As a calculation, a person earning $80 per hour who spends Saturday cleaning their house, doing their bookkeeping, handling their own repairs, and managing their own administrative tasks is spending time worth $240 to $320 on work that someone else would do for $80 to $100. The question is not, can I afford to hire someone? It is, what does it cost me to not hire someone? And what would I do with the hours I get back? For someone who can generate income or build something meaningful with recaptured time, outsourcing is not spending money. It is buying the one resource that does not replenish. Wealthy people understood this calculation earlier than most, not because they were born knowing it, because they looked honestly at where their hours were going and decided their time was worth protecting. The close here is what all 12 things have in common. Not one of them earns you anything in a social context. Not one of them photographs well. Not one of them is the kind of thing you bring up at dinner and watch the conversation shift. A used car. Term life at 28. A CPA. An index fund. A real estate attorney. An HSA treated as a retirement vehicle. A fiduciary. A therapist. Extra mortgage principal. Disability coverage. An S-corp. Someone else doing your administrative work. None of those things look like wealth. From the outside, they are completely invisible, but that is exactly what makes them the actual infrastructure of it. The people building real financial security are not buying things that signal success. They are buying things that create it, slowly, predictably, without anyone watching. The account grows. The interest compounds. The tax bill shrinks. The risk gets covered. And eventually, the result becomes visible in the risks they can absorb, in the negotiations they don't need to rush, in the decisions they make from stability rather than pressure. From the outside, it looks like luck. It isn't. It's 12 unglamorous purchases made consistently by people who decided the actual outcome mattered more than how the process looked while they were in it. That decision is available to you right now. Subscribe if this reframed something. Drop a comment with the one you're most likely to act on.